Hello. In the age of alpha male podcasts and manifestation videos, confidence seems to be a highly coveted quality.
It's Britney, bitch.
Much of our contemporary media, industrial and social, presents to us images and anthems of prideful self-love rituals, often claiming incoming rewards, boasting superiority, and decrying a nebulous opposition of naysayers that only want to see the protagonist fail out of jealousy and confusion. But confidence content has roots in a historically constant phenomenon of positive individuation within different social contexts. We categorize certain things as philosophy and religion now, depending on connotation and reputation, but ultimately Socrates' musings on the unexamined life and Confucius' writing on exercising governments by means of one's virtue are the intellectual ancestors of TikTokers that tell you to wake up early and eat clean. What's different and polarizing about the self-help genre is its seeming reticence towards critical examination. When online life coaches tell you what to do to be more confident, they're not simultaneously inviting you to analyze what confidence is, or the kinds of moral questions that beget a conversation on who deserves to be confident and who doesn't. Either people are just giving you direct programs and assuming you both agree on right and wrong, or they're appealing to apparent obvious realities through fallacious naturalism. Obviously, women are naturally women, and men are naturally men, and you have to be naturally more like your gender in order to be a good person, so you should therefore read this book and do your hair like this in order to be more divinely womanly. I don't know. Where there is a society, there are opinions on how to best succeed within that society, and an inherent problem with that is that this leaves no room for criticizing that society or forming a unique alternative of life. In the 2020s, as capitalism's hinges continue to buckle and societies have less and less confidence in their governments, their economies, their local communities, etc., this leaves more and more people with a lack of grounding. A need for a preferably simple layout of morals and values through which one can judge their own worth and thus measure their confidence based on how well they're fitting within that layout. So this may shock you, but being extremely online has correlations with bad mental health and low self-worth. I'm sorry to spring this on you. A recent study from South Korea found that excessive internet usage among adolescents was reportedly related with diminished overall physical and psychological functioning, which may lead to a deterioration of social skills in real life, and as a result, these adolescents experience social isolation. Furthermore, it may worsen learning habits, thereby decreasing academic performance while increasing impulsiveness and aggression. The thing is, we know people end up online because they're looking for resources and a sense of connection. A study from the International Journal of Mental Health and Addiction surveys mental health literature to conclude that socially excluded people are more prone to isolate themselves from others to avoid any possibility of re-experiencing a social exclusion scenario. To escape the social world, these individuals may prefer a virtual world where they can feel safe and avoid suffering from social anxiety and interpersonal problems, although they may feel loneliness. I can't relate to this at all, by the way. I'm never online, I'm always touching grass, and I have so many friends. But if this is the case with people who are online, it follows then that the most popular content is going to be stuff that addresses that insecurities, oftentimes, either through temporary relief or giving them a sense of gold-plated advice that will help them overcome all the issues in their lives. Your Hamzas and the Thewizardlizes of the world can thus bring in tons of views and supportive comments by offering charismatic tough talk designed to help the viewer see their own worth. But if we know that people feel a lack of good structure in their lives and an isolation caused by low sense of self-worth in social situations, which is causing them to flock to these online spaces in the first place, then we know that giving them self-development advice is not going to be sufficient to address the externalities that lead to that pathology in the first place. Quote, social exclusion seems to lead people to seek more solitude, and solitude seeking was already found to give rise to internet usage. Moreover, it is also known that loneliness and excessive internet usage mutually feed each other. Don't get me wrong, it's valuable to tell people to focus on what they can control and work towards bettering themselves to deal with difficult situations, that their confidence should come from the inside, not the outside. But the inside and the outside also mutually feed each other. A YouTuber giving advice inherently represents the outside to a viewer at home, and the things that make us who we are not all that separate from the things that surround us. All in all, People don't need better confidence per se. They need better conditions. They need better health. They need better shelter. They need better people around them. But if we can't straight up fix these conditions tomorrow in the blink of an eye, then at the very least, it is important that we kind of learn how to deal with what's in front of us. More importantly, it seems like to be able to improve the conditions, we do probably have to improve ourselves. I mean, we can't expect to overthrow capitalism if none of us want to get out of bed. So in this video, I talked to 5 creators who have discussed online advice content and a type of right-wing obsession with self-actualization. I talked to them about their own self-actualization. What does it mean to have confidence? What does it mean to be ruthlessly critical of all that exists and also be content with yourself? Take it away, Danae. For you, what's the stuff that just keeps coming up, like that you keep seeing, you know, when you think about like confidence content or not, like this obsession with confidence on social media? What's the stuff that comes to mind for you that you keep seeing?
I feel like I always see extremes of certain aesthetics and identities and lifestyles, like with the alpha stuff. Like there's one thing of being like a confident and hardworking, successful man, and then there's just like crossing that threshold of thinking that you're superior and above everyone else. That alpha bro mentality leads to a lot of misogyny and a lot of just hatred towards women and just like people outside of their social circle.
You see a lot of stuff as well when it comes to like women and like certain toxic confidence, like content that's like feminine or effeminate type of stuff as well.
Tara Mooney actually did a video on this a while ago. One thing I've seen is like people entering their villain era, which is just like a fancy way of saying that they're gonna stop being people pleasers and just like set healthy boundaries. But they feel like the villain because they're acting in a way that they normally don't. I feel like the pendulum has swung because I feel like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, self-deprecating humor was like the pinnacle of online comedy. Like a lot of it was like, oh, I'm so lazy. All I do is watch Netflix and eat pizza all day. But I feel like the pendulum has swung to like the other extreme of insecurity online, where it's like, now I'm the hottest person on the internet. Now I'm the funniest and the coolest person.
Like affirmations, manifesting, people who are like the hype you up type of people on TikTok, like you're beautiful, you don't deserve anything bad, right?
Yeah.
I've definitely seen it a lot in the spiritual community. I've definitely heard it a lot in music. Like a lot of musicians are trying to make empowering songs. Like there's just 2 extremes to me. It's like either super depressed,
Exactly.
like just nothing is going right, nobody gets me, but like, you know, I'm making this song so you understand, and then people kind of rally around that, or super like nobody can tell me shit, I'm the baddest person to ever do it, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I do get that, at least content wise online, like videos and stuff. I do feel like it's gone a lot, not necessarily worse, not necessarily negative like that, but like during the pandemic and after the pandemic, like I feel like people were inside, they were reconnecting with themselves, and there was a lot of like, obviously a lot of people were going through a lot, were grieving a lot, and there was just this need to have positive content, but now it's turned into more into a lot.
I think we're in a very nihilistic culture right now, like Gen Z particularly, right? And we see it in like, when we think about the idea of hyperpop, this kind of saccharine excess in its production, coupled with it's almost equally taking like notes from like pop punk, and it's also like super, not self-deprecating, but like just super in its own feelings, writing perspective. I can chalk some of that up to just being a teenager and just being youthful, the way it's easier to access that entire band of emotions, I guess sometimes. And that's why we like pop punk. That's why we loved My Chemical Romance. But also I think right now it is also very much informed by too much information. Our brains, I don't think, are meant to, nor is it healthy for us to have to engage with so much media and so much emotion all the time. The fact that our music, the themes of current popular music are on 2 such binaries is almost because we're having to sedate on so heavily, either on 2 sides. It's like either you're trying to do trap music and just like get super turned because you just want to escape from your current reality, or you're listening to Mitski, because you're just trying to delve deeper in it and just kind of scream underneath that emotional ocean, as it were.
So one thing that's always hurt my confidence is actually my lack of cooking skills. However, I'm on the path to changing that thanks to today's sponsor, Green Chef. Green Chef is a CCOF certified organic company that delivers organic produce and premium proteins to your door, so you can feel great about what you're eating and how it got to your table. The menu features options for all types of lifestyles and eating desires: keto and paleo, vegan, vegetarian, fast and fit, Mediterranean, and gluten-free. This evening I'm cooking a nice buttery lemon garlic shrimp with linguine, sauteed zucchini, sun-dried tomatoes, and parmesan. I didn't have to worry about meal planning, grocery shopping, or food prep. Green Chef took care of that for me, and the results tasted awesome. What's even better is that Green Chef is supporting reforestation in partnership with One Tree Planted to improve food insecurity as part of their commitment to sustainability. And with these deliveries, Green Chef offsets 100% of the plastic in every box. Now, if you're in a similar situation and need some help getting your cooking done efficiently, I have an exciting offer for you. Use my code SAYHELLO60 to get 60% off plus free shipping on your first box. Go to greenchef.com for more details. Thanks again to Green Chef. Now back to our video. Both sort of seem like very like reactive sort of cries for help, I guess you could say, like very emotional sort of like reactions to like a base situation. You remember Dan Olson's video about the NFT video?
Yeah, the line goes up.
The line goes up, and in the beginning, he sort of breaks down how the cryptocurrency sort of movement like emerges out of this like this particular right-wing like vibe that emerges out of the 2008 financial crisis. In the wake of that, he talks about how on one end you had like Occupy Wall Street, and then people on the other side who say that also something is very wrong, but are saying that what we have to do is become financially free. What we have to do is become at the front, at the center of the next thing, so that, you know, the next time people with money are going to be us and not those people.
This time they can be the boot.
This time we will be the boot. Both of these come as a reaction to like a collapse of the complete collapse of structure globally, especially in the US, but also like in other countries as well. Obviously, there's this like shattering of confidence. Like everybody just completely loses structure and confidence, and so everybody just goes into these very polar directions. We have on one hand people that are like these like sort of lefty doomers that's like the world is fucked, everything is fucked, I have trauma, so there's no point in like drinking water, like this kind of thing. And then on the other hand, you have people that are like, if I simply sleep 2 hours a night and do 1,000 push-ups every day, I will conquer the world, and everybody else is pussy. Was it just the pandemic, or do you feel like if we're to say there's like this decline in confidence, or like this confidence crisis almost that people seem to have, and this like comfort crisis almost too, I would add, like this desire to constantly be comfortable? Why are people like this? You know,
why are people like this?
Why are we like this?
Why are we like this? I think personally that a lot of the reason why people feel less confident is because there's a lot more competition and direct exposure to other people. So we're more exposed to other people doing things that maybe we would want to do, who are maybe around our age or younger than us. Like, I feel like we use social media a little bit differently. Maybe it was like Facebook and you saw your friends and you're like your school, like your classmates and stuff like that. You weren't necessarily exposed to somebody else at the other side of the world that completely has a different background from you, that you don't really know where they started from, but they're somewhere around where you want to be. And you don't see what happened before. You see where they are right now.
I really think it goes back to social media. I think it goes back to both the fact that like we are aware that most of what we do in the social sphere is on display for other people in a much broader sense than it ever has been before, in conjunction with the fact that we're seeing more and more people talking about how they don't feel confident. So more people are simultaneously feeling the pressure to display confidence while also feeling that it's normal that they don't necessarily have it, because more and more people are talking about like how can I be more confident? How can I display that trait, et cetera, et cetera. And then kind of to cap it all off, the grifters who see the need and would like to fill the need, and so start kind of offering, I guess, psychological snake oil to meet that demand?
It's a lot of things in the environment that to me affects you directly. Like, yes, we see examples, we see people like that are talking about how hard it's been, or like how everybody can do it, or who have succeeded much later in life, or who are doing things differently. But at the end of the day, you're still drowning in success stories a little bit. Like, you see it so often that it is imprinted somewhere that like, oh, you could be doing something more. How can you not see a decline in confidence where everyone is like basically basing their confidence off of doing things? Just the concept of seeing other people, to have those people as like models, or like basically living through other people, is preventing people from being in the present, from living their own lives, because they're so, if you're not present, it's really hard to be confident, because you're not here. You don't even know yourself anymore at some point. It's really hard to get to know yourself when you don't even really spend time with yourself, because you're spending time looking at other people.
I'm really fascinated by the delineation of saying like, I'm confident, but I don't think I'm better than anyone. Like, that's kind of where I've always wanted to be at. And I feel like a lot of the constructions that we have of confidence and of self-worth when it comes to society, when it comes to what we see on social media, seems to come from this like inherent suggestion that this means that you're better than other people. Like, I'm a high value person. I'm an alpha, or I'm
high
in my
value.
villain
That's
era.
like a triggering phrase.
Yeah. That phrase itself, it like it implies like, no, I'm not like low value.
I'm worth something.
I'm worth something, and I'm worth something more than other people.
Confidence is self-assuredness, which means it's kind of a lack of shame, right? You're not ashamed of who you are. That's what, to me, if I were to boil confidence down into like one specific thing, especially when it comes to self-confidence, it's not being ashamed of anything about yourself. And so what I think is so interesting about dudes like Andrew Tate is they are deeply, deeply, deeply insecure in a great many ways, but they're shameless about their repugnant behaviors. And so for a young man in particular, when they see someone who is shameless about being an unfeeling, asshole-ish, irredeemable piece of shit, they see someone who's confident. They're like, oh, wow, look at that guy. He doesn't even care. What's interesting about that is, of course, anyone who knows how human behavior works and how people operate sees how deeply insecure he is. Like, the dude picked a fight with a 19-year-old girl on Twitter, and it ended up in him, like, he was so adamant about defending his pride that he is now sitting in prison because he had to pick a fight with a 19-year-old girl on Twitter. Like, is that something that a confident person does? No, obviously that's pathetic in a word. But because he had already earned the reputation of, a guy who is shameless, a guy who is confident, there were so many people ready to throw themselves at his feet and be like, turn a blind eye to his insecurities. And so I think that a lot of what we see on social media is people building up this idea of themselves as someone who is deeply confident, deeply self-assured, and utterly shameless, to the point that when their insecurities that they haven't addressed do pop up, which they will because they're a human being, other people are ready to just fall on that sword for them and defend them and create this kind of environment where they don't ever have to address those weaknesses.
The performance of confidence is essentially this deep understanding and acknowledgement of, I have done things that are societally canonical, that society upholds. As a child, I grew up with parents that told me, you are handsome, you are smart, you are worthy. So long as you do X, Y, and Z, you can access the world. Don't be fat, but still we're going to feed you like a lot of stuff. Don't be gay. Don't be a crybaby, especially as a man, a cis-het man, being socialized as a boy. Don't cry, be strong, flex your muscles, stand up tall, take out the garbage. And the more that you do these things in repetition, you develop a particular adeptitude at it, which then you take pride in. Confidence is kind of like a signifier to basically say to other people that I have accomplished X, Y, and Z, and therefore that is why I'm confident. People are trying to appear desirable to other people. You have to perform the confidence in order to say that you have the things that that society deems to be good. That is, of course, tied to that video that you made too, with about productivity gurus and how all of it is a form of capitalism, because society encourages these things, not because like they breed better people. but because they breed a society that is more commodifiable. So confidence in many ways is commodifiable. Like if you think of the things that you need to do in order to be confident, they cost a lot of money a lot of the times. In order to go to school and be smart and invest in books, invest in Audible, invest in working out. Another source of confidence is physique. So that's expensive for femme presenting folks and women dealing with gender and the performance of gender in the terms of makeup. Thinking about how incredibly expensive makeup, skin routines, hair.
I also think that there is the fact that the economy is tough. People cannot get the things that their parents could get that easily anymore. So it's hard for people to project themselves into the future. People feel very stuck at their jobs to me. Younger people don't even see the point sometimes in having certain jobs, as having 9 to 5s, because how are you going to afford a house anyway? Right. All of that good stuff.
If I got to be honest, I probably used to be a doomer when I was like 18 or 19, you know? Yeah. And like, I am very empathetic towards the process of what causes people to doom spiral, like what it is to want to be educated about the world or want to invest in the world around you and see that there's so many problems that you don't have the skill, time, or access to fix.
I think Twitter in general has become a shitstorm over the past 3 months, especially since Elon has taken over and fucked the entire platform. Yeah. Just like there's so much negativity on Twitter, and I'm sure I contribute to that a little bit because I quote tweet and like, but I think I get into like an existential place where I'm like, oh my God, will things get better? Like it feels like the world ending sometimes.
I think all in all, to me, more than a crisis in confidence, there's also a crisis in kindness. I see a lot of like content creation come back to like show in people's personality, where kind of everybody thinks of themselves as a brand, where everybody's trying to have their niche, everybody's trying to like distinguish themselves from the next person. Like everybody's kind of hurting at this point. Everybody's kind of like feeling some type of way about how things are going and whatever. So we're gonna keep seeing more unhealthy boundary setting or like more confidence empowerment that is not even rooted in actually for yourself or in kindness and whatnot. Because I feel like as we grow more connected, we're also having less conversations. We're just like kind of shouting our thoughts and trying to make our dent into something.
There's a confidence that you sort of exude that I think people would probably... Yeah, I think people would see you and be like, well, Ferna obviously is confident, right? I'm curious to ask like what your experience is in terms of, do you feel like you're a very confident person? And if so, like confident in what sense?
I definitely perform it. And that's why this thing is such a sham. I am extremely insecure to the point where I find it difficult to even engage with those parts of myself. And it's because of the different things. Growing up, like I've always been a man of size. And I just recently got into being comfortable in my body to an extent. I got this video on anti-fatness coming up this month. Yeah, I'm positive I have an eating disorder. I'm positive that like, because I mean, like, you know, like I fast, like
you do fast.
As it pertains to like the rest of the confidence, like I often, like when I watch videos like from you, like and FD, all of my contemporaries, I often feel insecure about my own intellectual prowess. There's a lot of different ways that I am insecure about myself, and canonically or like traditionally, that is antipodal to being confident. Confidence is conflated with security.
Right.
It is to be secure in one's own skin, to be, you know, head up high and whatnot.
I would say my audience probably thinks I'm more confident than I am. Just because a lot of my videos are scripted, because I don't know if you could tell, but sometimes I feel like I'm just like scrambling and trying to put words together. So, and I'm sure you do it too. Like you just sometimes need like a strict guideline of like how you want to present your points. So I think because I try to be as well spoken as possible in my videos, that makes me sound more confident than I actually am.
I don't necessarily consider myself a perfect person, far from it, but it was actually like accepting that and knowing how to kind of sit with that led me to being a confident person. For me, where my confidence started really growing, taking off, was when I started disentangling it from things that it often tends to get like lumped in with. For example, charisma. I think people forget that someone can be very confident but not necessarily charismatic, and someone can be incredibly charismatic but not at all confident. Because again, are they self-assured? Are they comfortable with themselves? Because it doesn't matter if you can really like work a room, warm up a person really, really quickly, like get people really into you. If you don't believe it yourself.
You say, for instance, confidence can be, I know I'm smart, or I know that I can do something well, right? Or that you said you're not necessarily looking for someone to coach you on certain things. I think that on the contrary, if you're confident, you can be okay with accepting that I may be really good at these things.
Yeah.
But maybe, you know what, I'll look outside of myself for somebody who knows what they're doing to give me tips on this, or like to do something. Because I do feel like a lot of insecure people will not, like, we might think of insecure people as looking at outside validation all the time. But if you're insecure, you also may be too insecure to look for help. Or you may feel like a blow to your ego to actually go to someone and be like, I don't really know how to do this thing, show me. Like, it is hard to ask for help, right? Now, I'm not talking about coaching like TikTok coaches and stuff like that, right? I'm talking about genuinely wanting to do something and getting help to do it, or like looking for, if you will, mentors to do something.
I think what we're talking about, this progressive confidence that I think that we're looking at, is more of embracing those insecurities, accepting them, and understanding them not as insecurities, but instead character or you know, traits of oneself, and the beautiful parts. Even when singing, I was trained operatic vocal for like the longest, and if you know anything about like traditional like singing techniques, like they're trying to produce the best vocal.
Bel canto.
You know, in a healthy way. Yeah, exactly. Like, you know, like they say go from your diaphragm, and just like, you know, you can sing all of these different styles of music, but like once you do it traditionally with these particular canonical techniques, then you are able to produce the best vocal. It's interesting because after like knowing that, like doing that for years, I now find myself gravitating towards songs that I love that have some of the most flawed vocals. Tom York, like, nigga can't sing. Like, he can't sing. Like, Tom York cannot sing. You know, he has an awful voice, but like, it's very emotive. It has so much broken inside of it. A better example is auto-tune. You know, auto-tune is basically literally aligning your vocals in order to make them hit every note perfectly. And that's not always the best thing to do. In fact, a lot of people like would say that they don't like auto-tune because it zaps the humanity out of it. And that's kind of the same situation when it comes to this confidence. A progressive confidence. It's just like, it is taking the auto-tune off of yourself. It is taking away the protection and allowing yourself to show your scars and loving about yourself. The small little blemishes in your voice in a song produce a lot more character, unless they just suck. Unless like it's Rihanna, because I mean, like, Rihanna can't sing.
What is confidence? Like, what even is that? And I think it's really interesting that people are basically using it as a short form for self-confidence. Like, more often people are like, how do I build more confidence? But what they mean is, how can I be more confident in myself?
Right.
And we kind of forget that confidence is also used to, like, you can say, I have the utmost confidence in someone, right? So it's often used to describe trust in a person as well, which means that when you say confidence, really what you're saying is assuredness. Are you assured in another person or in yourself? So I think remembering that, you know, like, confidence isn't necessarily describing a relationship with yourself. It's just describing kind of how you feel about certain traits, and they can be in another person or they can be in yourself.
What's interesting about it is that we think of the confidence as being something very formed about like a self. So it has to be dependent then on ideas, like fixed ideas. So like, I'm confident because I'm tall, I'm pretty, I know how to do this and that, I'm a good writer, I make good videos, whatever. But those things are not really fixed, right? They change. You could easily, like, all of those things could easily go at some point. They had nothing to do also with a fixed idea of who you are, because those are all just things that kind of happen to you. Like, you get good at stuff because you do it a lot, or you're tall because of your genes, right? And so that ultimately comes down to like a pretty problematic, like, ideological thing of like, oh, somebody's better than somebody else because of some traits that they have, rather than a confidence that's based on something deeper. And I think that's a lot of what we see, like, like problematically with confidence content, even that the manifestations that people are doing, whether people believe in manifestation or not, is based on like, I want to be pretty, right? Like, or I'm gonna lose weight, or I'm gonna get that job that I want. And like, if manifestation like is such a powerful thing that we can tap into, like, why would we waste it on something so arbitrary and socially dictated as like people's ability to perceive me as looking like some celebrity? So that's where I think confidence ultimately comes from, not just being confident in yourself, but like confident in the world in a way, which I think we lose like an ability to do, because it's very easy to become very like dispirited about life and the world, like the state of things. Right.
I don't know how to tell people how I stopped being a doomer. All I know is that like at one point I started to realize that the engine of optimism was like more productive to ending the things that made me anxious about impending doom. Right. And I kind of just like ran with it. You like understand why you have to move differently. I think I come to this point with a lot of things where it's hard to get people to this spark moment of whatever you need to realize why moving in a different way is more advantageous to you on the whole. I guess is why we make art and why we're having this conversation. Right. Like, because if I had to tell someone, it's like, I think doomerism shows that a person may be too individualistic from where they want to be right now, if that makes any sense. Doomerism is an intrinsic or is an internal process. It's projecting onto the world your fears and seeing them as insurmountable, and then taking that projection as confirmation of what is real. Therefore, if you can get that, I know that's hard, but you can get that. You can then also get that if you flip, and then you start to look at these positive interactions in the world, or at least ways in which you are able to improve your interactions with the world. You can project those positive projections out into the world, and then suddenly you find a world worth living for. And then you also start realizing that, like, well, that's actually just a normal world. You were living in that world the whole time. And I think for a lot of people, for me at least, it made me, the things that made me notice the positive parts of the world were my friends, or were people in my community, and made me go out to go interact with them. I know that actually, maybe my world is gonna be okay. I really can't guarantee the whole world to you, but like oftentimes my pessimism and nihilism came from the fact that I felt like my world wasn't safe, that my world was ending. And as I got comfort over myself and my own situation, I was able to see how I could spread that feeling outward.
There are periods of time in my life where I was like super depressed, and I was just like, man, there's no point to anything. There's no point to live. There's no point to the world. And when I look back, I realized that there was always just something going on. Like I was always like having just a shitty time with my family. I had a shitty time at school. I had a shitty situation in my personal life. And so of course you're going to look at the world and everything's going to suck as well. And it's not to say that there's not constant, crises and terrors in the world, but it's to say that you only decide then that it's not worth doing anything about because you feel like that just confirms your own personal experience as some sort of externality that you can just point to and say easily, like, well, no, it's actually just way deeper than that, so I should just give up, and there's actually nothing worth fighting for. Like the brain has a way of rationalizing
itself.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Rationalizing things, no matter how irrational they technically are. It's this quote at the end of the Sinophobia video from Will Paris from this podcast, and talks about how we kind of have to get away from the concept that, for instance, with racism, that these pathologies exist out of people's sort of nascent selves, like some sort of idea of a natural issue with them being irrational, and instead realize that these are just rationalizations that people are making for a deeply unequal society. There's so much of that I think comes back to a confidence culture thing as well, and I'm kind of fascinated too. I view it on one hand as like this type of resource that people will do these rationalizations to try to gain, but I also view it as this type of liberating force that people can tap into if they really achieve it on a real level. I think there's something to a confidence that allows you to see things for what they are and be present, and not have to have anything or have to achieve anything in order to justify that confidence. Confidence that's able to say like, nah, Like, that's a bad idea, I'm just not gonna do it. Or, no, I actually need help with this, I'm gonna ask for help. I'm gonna work with somebody, even if I don't like them 100%, or even if it's not gonna get me as much glory. So much of confidence, I feel like, when it's genuine, comes down to just not being based in a fixed anything. It's not based in like, oh, I need to have this. This is what makes me good or bad.
I like that you use that term. It's not fixed in anything.
Yeah.
Because I think if we're trying to get towards a definition of confidence, is like that encompasses its best qualities. Maybe it would be something like confidence is the ability to move forward. It's about motion. Yeah. Because all confidence is whatever it takes for you to make that decision, to do the thing that you want to do. Because whether you think you have all the data or not, everything random anyway. Like, you don't actually know how these consequences are gonna like hash out. But like we have confidence through various means, whether it be science, whether it be through wisdom, whether it be through guidance or expectation to do something. That's where that confidence might come.
So many people are stuck in this place where they just stop. They just stop and they're just like, I can't. There's no point. You gotta be a little delusional. I feel like what we're actually coming towards is that, like, because once again, I feel like to those people, I have to be like, because they can talk to you and they can tell you exactly why they feel the way they feel, and they can hit you with a really solid rational argument. When we go back to what you talked about before, your argument is just a way to ration out what you already felt. Consider believing this other equally rational / irrational thing is also cool, and let's see where that also ends us. Okay, like, I see where you're coming from in terms of, like, you know, financial liberation, and like there's no revolution coming, and we live in the real world or whatever. But like, what if I'm happy, you know?
More than that, what if I know that already, but I'm gonna contrive a reason for why I still want to make the revolution happen anyway? I just think it'd be really fun if me and my friends got together and tried to do our best and set up mutual aid, because it's not going to solve the world, but like my neighborhood is going to be good in my 20 people, and maybe then something happens from that.
There's something to like the fact that like people will say things are irrational, and like it's like they forget that life is irrational, right? Like the world is irrational. The world doesn't make any sense. Shit that doesn't make any sense keeps happening over and over again. That's the whole point of why we're so frustrated, right? Building a rationale is actually really good, as long as you know that it's not gonna fully explain everything, and there's just gonna be constant needs for adjustment and but the rationale serves as a way for you to like make a path for yourself.
Like, one of the things that people get really frustrated with me over is that I don't prescribe advice. And I think that for them kind of coming out of, or still being part of like the manosphere and stuff, because I know that like FD signifiers videos pop up, foreigns, mine, Noah's, like mine to a lesser extent, but I do get some guys kind of from the manosphere. And I think they're frustrated about the fact that I'm not giving them a playbook. I'm not telling them like, this is exactly what you have to do. And the issue is that they're like, why are you only describing your own experiences? And it's like, well, because mine are different from yours. And here is the thinking that I applied to them to kind of help me get to this point. But you are going to need to adjust that accordingly based on what it is that you are going through and what you need to work on. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, confidence and self-assuredness, it's not a total lack of weakness. It's a radical acceptance of everything about yourself. It's accepting that you have strengths and weaknesses because you're a human being, and you're not ashamed of that. You're not ashamed of the weaknesses that you do have. And I can't know every single individual person's weaknesses. I can't know all of their struggles. In the age of social media, boiled down to a single sentence, confidence is letting go of the need for validation.
Right.
And we're social animals. Like, it feels good to be noticed. It feels good to be validated by other humans, but there's connection and then there's validation. Yeah. And you shouldn't need validation.
Right.
You should be able to kind of like know who you are without other people telling you. If that makes sense.
Right.
I have gotten comments where people did say that like they wish they had my confidence or something, but that's not necessarily my focus. I would say a lot of it is just more so organizing, or just literally just starting to do the things they want to do. Like, as opposed to trying to make people feel extremely good about themselves, I think I usually tend to try and make them realize they don't have to feel bad about certain things. It's not like, oh, I'm the best person to ever exist. It's more so like, I'm not so isolated now, and I can do the things I want to do and feel good about myself. Yeah, instead of a one size fits all, it's just like other people are going through similar things. Now, how to best move forward for myself. I don't necessarily think that confidence content is inherently bad. I don't necessarily think that structure in structured routines, strict things are inherently bad. Some people need that. It's just finding a fine balance and something that works for you. And to me, with a lot more kindness, which sounds cheesy, but honestly goes a long way. With a lot more kindness towards yourself and towards other people, I think everything becomes a lot more easier. Like everything.
I've gotten a lot of comments of people saying I'm their comfort creator, which I think is very sweet.
It is.
Because I had a lot of comfort creators back when I was in high school, and to be that for someone I think is really awesome. I think YouTube does play a part in my own journey in confidence because I was very insecure in high school and very awkward, and I didn't have a good sense of self back then.
Okay.
I let other people, control how I think and how I view myself. I would say part of it is with coming out has definitely helped me with confidence, with self-expression and just being open about who I am has definitely given me a sense of confidence. I think being in therapy helps. I've been seeing my therapist. It's going to be 5 years in July. So I think being able to work through my issues with her has made all the difference in my life. It's allowed me to make my own decisions, and just my approach to life is so much different than it was 5 years ago. And it could also be due to age because I'm 24 now, so I would have been 19. I don't know, just being able to cope with my own feelings and my own mental illnesses has definitely made me more sure in myself. I really try not to rely on the numbers and positive comments as a source of confidence and self-worth. I really try my best to have that come from within because, as you know, YouTube can be a numbers game.
Very competitive person. Probably to my own detriment. I tell FD all the time, I'm more like, I hate you. I love you, and I also hate you. When I got the first comment on my Caribbean homophobia video that, hey, I am a queer man from Jamaica that fled to Canada, and seeing your video of you confronting your homophobia so vulnerably, I now realize that I might be able to come back home at one point. I could die now. I could die. I'm more like, okay, that has fulfilled me. And I forgot the quote, but essentially great men plant seeds that will bear trees that they will never bask in those shades. I want to plant trees of which shade I will never bask in, but it will make for us shadier day for someone else.
Exactly.
I find confidence in knowing that I'm able to do that. But it's a very selfish confidence. I'm aware that this is narcissism. I'm aware that
it can be, yeah.
Not even it can be, it is for me. I know for sure, to think that you should listen to me, you should hang on to my words, eat what I'm saying, consume this, that I feel confident enough to upload a 40-minute video into the ether and you should watch it. No, man. So I have a mixture of that. There's that, and then there's this more philosophical, heartwarming kumbaya, I just want to touch people's lives consensually. I'd be lying if I said I don't like the fact that there's a catalog of work that I'm proud of that will immortalize me long after I'm dead. But it's all of those things, not any individual one more than the next, but all of those things in tandem as pistons in the car that is forward.
Talking about when people are asking how can I be more confident, how can I be more interesting, how can I be more appealing to other people, oftentimes the piece of advice that's given is have a thing, have something that you're good at, something that you're passionate about. People like it when somebody has something that they bring to the table. And even then that is true, it is true, but it's also commodified. And ultimately, confidence is not having to commodify things so that you can appeal to other people. It's just having something for yourself. I don't think it's just important to confidence. I think it's essential. I think it's essential to have something that is just for you, that is just about you enjoying your own company. And that's it. Nobody else is involved. I think for years, when I was in the closet, part of why I didn't come out is I was caught up in the security of my insecurity. I was so used to living with this sort of underlying sense of unease with who I am that I was afraid that if I took it away and I took the plunge and I did this big change and I prioritized myself and my relationship with myself, what if I still felt that way? what if I still didn't like that person? Now, thankfully for me, it was the gender euphoria, that feeling of just kind of being alone by myself and being like, holy shit. Oh, I love just being with me. I love just being with myself now. And having that base to operate from, and then having conversations like this one, has really, really emphasized just how important it is to not work on how other people perceive you, and not even necessarily how you perceive yourself, but just how you exist with yourself.
Yeah.
Like how you find that peace and comfort just being.
So it might not surprise you to know that in the end, I kind of struggled to have a concrete answer to address all of your problems. I wanted to give advice about how to be confident and not also fall for the pitfalls of confidence ideology. That didn't really happen, but in each interview, I got a different sense of different perspectives on what confidence is, how it's experienced, and different things we can look towards to try to develop our own confidence in ourselves, in our own lives. In my conversation with Anna Marie, I found that confidence is community. When we're able to find people like us, maybe because of our gender or sexuality or life experiences, we feel reassured in our own validity, and we can feel enlightened on how we can be our best selves and what qualities we can be proud of in ourselves. At the same time, we have to be wary of placing too much burden on others who we feel connected with to cater perfectly to our needs, to give us advice, to set the ideal example of confidence. Otherwise, we can put people on a pedestal and act destructively when we're forced to be critical again. In my conversation with Awa, I found that confidence is kindness. Life is ultimately extremely complicated, and there's no good way for us to know the perfect answers to our problems or anyone else's, but we can at least feel good about ourselves, knowing that we treated others as well as we could and didn't cause anyone any further issues by allowing our difficulties to make us toxic. At the same time, kindness can often paper over the difficulties and complexities of everyday life, and when unexamined, can force us into self-destructive patterns of polite complacency with injustice and moral grandstanding over our perceived goodness. In my conversation with Foreign, I found that confidence is individuality. Knowing what you're good at, what challenges you can handle, and what boundaries you can set based on your self-sufficiency is a revelatory process that allows you to feel comfortable with your place in society and your value to yourself and others. At the same time, individuality is isolating. It puts you in a position to constantly work, constantly perform, constantly help others, even when the pressure is too heavy for your broad shoulders to carry, and when unexamined, can give us an impression either of our own false sense of superiority or our own false sense of inferiority, rather than a truer sense of being normal and acceptable. In my conversation with Finn, I found that confidence is privacy. Rather than constantly look for external affirmation and comparison to measure how to live well, looking at the life in front of you, separate from the advice of others, trusting your own judgment and avoiding trying to rationalize your own worth, grounds us as part of an inherently irrational world, rejecting the societal forces of competition and approval, and accepting love for love's sake. At the same time, privacy is detached. The insights and resources we receive from others are not only crucial to our development, they are our development. Ultimately, we do what we know, and we can't know if what we know is wrong unless we look outside ourselves. In my conversation with Colormind, I found that confidence is motion. The only constant of life is change, and when we reject that change, we find ourselves at odds with our nature. To be confident is to be like any other living being. We rest when we need rest. We wake up, we eat, we poop. We move forward even when it seems pointless because the movement is the point. At the same time, if we don't stop from time to time to feel our grief, to analyze our world, to accept our present in some way, we burn ourselves out quickly, which risks missing all the resources and connections we can use for transformation. In other words, obviously, confidence is complicated, but just because something is complicated does not make it impossible. As a matter of fact, the most complicated things in the world can be experienced with utter simplicity when they are made necessary. We breathe because we have to, not because we know how it works. And so, while thinking about things is extremely important, being is the ultimate thing. We cannot allow our process of thinking and transforming to undermine our process of being. Much in the same way, our desire for a better world should not ruin our process of living in this one. Now, if you asked me for advice, which I don't know why you do that, I'd say stop looking for confidence. Stop trying to gain confidence. Confidence is not a commodity, it's a process. Your process is right in front of you, waiting for you to get over this apparent desire for perfection and get back on the saddle. What your process might not realize is that you don't necessarily always have to be on the saddle. There's a lot of valuable information in insecurity, and there's a lot of toxicity in confidence. I think generally, we want to have a good balance of both. That means we have to accept that just like life, we suck sometimes. If we didn't suck at certain things, we would see no value in those who are good at those things. There's nothing liberating about being the biggest, baddest, bestest person in the world. And there's nothing inherently noble about being the saddest, most pathetic person in the world either. Instead of obsessing with being better or worse, the best or the worst, why don't we focus on the truest quality of life? The pinnacle of the human condition, the ultimately liberating quality of being mid. Let's be mid. Thanks for watching. See you. Have a good one.